This is Surfing Through Cinema. I'm your host, Hawaii Harry. Today I'll be discussing the next film for Classic Hollywood Week. This is an Alfred Hitchcock classic with leading man Cary Grant as an advertising agent mistaken for a different man. With a case of mistaken identity and Mount Rushmore, this episode is all about North by Northwest. Okay, so some technical details about North by Northwest. This is the only MGM film Alfred Hitchcock ever made. He typically worked with different studios, and he worked with MGM because the film stock that they were using required using wider and bigger sets, and MGM had that. So that's why they filmed there. Then another technical detail, Alfred Hitchcock wanted Roger Thornhill, who's played by Cary Grant, to be inside of Abraham Lincoln's nose, and he wanted him to be hiding there, and then he had a sneezing fit, and then the bad guys would have caught him in there. But the park rangers and a couple other people thought it wouldn't be appropriate, so they cut that idea. And so what happens now is the characters fight in between the presidents, not up in their faces. Alright, and another technical detail, it was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including editing, art direction, and screenplay, but didn't win any of them. And 2 of those 3 Academy Awards went to Ben-Hur, which is a Charlton Heston film, and ironically enough, it was made by MGM, so they were kind of competing with themselves for that category. Okay, so now let's get into the plot. Roger Thornhill is mistaken for George Kaplan, a supposed spy, and this happens because our lead, Cary Grant's character, he just went to a restaurant to meet up with different executives because he's an advertising agent. And someone calls out for the name George Kaplan, and just so happens at the same time, Roger Thornhill, he's snapping his fingers for the waiter. So there's some goons in the background who think that Roger Thornhill is George Kaplan, so then they surround him and kidnap him and take him to a nice house, and while he's there, he's super confused. He's talking to the leader of these people and telling him he's not the guy they think he is, and they think he's just a clever spy. And so then they give him a lot of alcohol until he becomes drunk, so that he could crash and be arrested for a DUI, and which is basically what happens. He ends up getting arrested, but he's so drunk and he can hardly form sentences. So the police, call his mom, and they put him on trial. And so he decides, when he becomes sober again and is hungover, the police decide to go ahead and go to the place he said he was at. And when they went there, all the liquor that was hidden on a bookshelf was missing, so he realized that there was a plot against him, so they all left and changed the scenery, made it look like they weren't there. So he realized this is a lot deeper than he expected. And so then later on, he's framed for murdering a UN ambassador, and so now he's not only on the run from these supposed goons and bad guys, he's also now on the run from the federal government. So he's being chased by police officers and FBI and all kinds of people. And so he escapes on a train headed towards Chicago, and he runs into Eve Kendall, and she's secretly working for the feds to help take down the leader of the group that initially kidnapped Roger. And so then they start to make a connection and have a romantic moment with each other, and then she decides to help him find the real George Kaplan. But as it turns out, it's a setup, and the area he goes to is just an empty field, and he's chased by an airplane. And this is the iconic shot you always see from this movie, where he turns around and there's a plane shooting at him, and he jumps in the corn maze and tries to escape from it. The plane crashes into a gas truck, which explodes and catches on fire. And then all the locals, they drive out to see what's happening, and Roger slips away into one of their cars to get out of that area. And then he runs into the professor who's in charge of creation of the name George Kaplan. It turns out he's not a real person. He hires on Roger to become George Kaplan and actually be a spy. And they find out that the leader, Van Damme, who is the leader of this group, he's going to be in Mount Rushmore, and he's going to fly away in that evening. And Roger agrees to go there to help them spy on him. And then he runs into Eve again, and he realizes that she is working for the feds. And then he learns that the plan is to have her actually fly away with Van Damme so that she could be a spy within the Soviet Union. And Roger wants nothing to do with this. He wants to save her before that happens because he knows that once Van Damme finds out the truth, he'll just kill her. And Roger's kind of fallen in love with her, so he can't let that happen. So he follows Van Damme and them to a house, which is kind of near Mount Rushmore. And there's going to be a plane that's going to land there within 15 minutes. Like, it's insane how quickly he has to get her out of there. And, right as they're about to get on the plane, Roger comes in and saves her, and they drive off. And then they get out of the car and they start climbing down Mount Rushmore to get away from Van Damme and his goons. And, as they're doing so, Van Damme finds them and they start shooting at them. And so Roger and Eve, they start falling off the, Mount Rushmore. They're on the edge. But then the feds come in and take down the last of Van Damme's goons. And so then Roger and Eve are saved, they're spared. And then the last shot is them on a train going towards their supposed wedding or their supposed honeymoon. And that's where the film ends. It's kind of an abrupt ending, but nevertheless, that's how it ends. Alright, so that's the plot for North by Northwest. I'm going to go on a break real quick, but first here's a message from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Here's how. It's totally free. There are tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your computer and even your cell phone. But that's not all. Anchor distributes your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You could even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor is everything you need to make a complete podcast all in one small place. So go on and download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today.
Even though this is a presidential election, there are many more candidates on the ballot besides the president. Go to Ballot Ready for a nonpartisan guide to your entire ballot. From there, you could compare candidates based on stances on issues, biography, or endorsements, and then save your choices to use when you vote by mail or in the voting booth. You can even request your absentee ballot or make a plan to vote early or on election day. This election matters. Make sure you have a plan to vote, so go to ballotready.org and enter your address to make a plan to vote and vote informed. Okay, so we're back from our break. Now I'm going to get into some critical reviews and my personal reviews about North by Northwest. So it has a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. And they state their reasoning. It's gripping, suspenseful, and visually iconic. And this is especially true, like I said earlier, with the plane chasing Roger. That's one of the most famous scenes in the film, if not one of the most famous ever. Classic shot of him being shot at, right? And then Empire Magazine gives it a 100. And, that's the highest rating they give for movies. So they definitely, like with Rotten Tomatoes, they definitely think this is one of the best movies ever made. And then the New York Times, they give it a 90. And they said their reasoning, it's, classic Hitchcock, has a lot of his classic tropes. And I'm curious why they don't give it a higher rating, because, this seems to be a good rating, right? But they don't give it much a higher rating. But across the board, if you look at all the various sites, A lot of people like this movie. This is definitely one of the top 10, if not top 5, Hitchcock movies. And, you know, compared with like Vertigo and Rear Window, this is definitely one of the most famous, one of the most popular. So it's hard to find a negative review of this. I wasn't able to find any. But if you guys know of any, please let me know. I'm curious to see what people who don't like this movie think of it. So now I'll get into my personal views. I absolutely love this movie. It's one of the greatest movies ever. It's definitely in my top 10 now. And I really liked the whole idea of the audience was like, with Roger, they knew a lot of what's going on, but nobody else believed him. So it's almost like that, come on people, can't you see what's going on? But nevertheless, it's really well done. The writing is very classy, very cool, and definitely one of Hitchcock's more stylish movies. It's not a horror movie like Psycho, and it's not a thriller like Rear Window. This is more of an action romance type of movie, and some people even consider it like a precursor for the James Bond movies, and you could definitely see that. He definitely falls in love really fast with a woman on a train. He's very witty, very smart and funny, but he can also be pretty serious. Definitely a lot like Sean Connery's James Bond. And the only critical point I really have of it is the ending was really abrupt. Like literally, it was 2 seconds long. Roger reaches down to pick up Eve, and then the second he picks her up, from Mount Rushmore, it cuts to them on the train saying, now we're going to live our happily ever after. And then the train goes in the tunnel, and then it says the end, right? Literally a 2 second long ending. Personally, I haven't seen too many Hitchcock movies. I've only seen Vertigo, Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, and this one. And in the other ones, they didn't have this abrupt of an ending. They actually had a pretty solid, pretty thought out ending. I mean, I guess To Catch a Thief had a pretty abrupt ending too, but this one was really abrupt and a little jarring. I was not ready for it to be over, I guess. I was just so invested in the characters. I kind of wish they had more of a satisfying ending. But other than that, I really liked this movie. I really, really liked Cary Grant. I think he's probably one of the best leading mans. And he is totally in his element in this movie. Alright. Well, those are my thoughts and feelings about North by Northwest. Next time I'll be discussing the next film for Star Wars Week. Now, there are fans of Star Wars who love the originals. There are others that don't like the prequels, the sequels, and everything in between. Yet none of them comes within miles of being terrible. It's a film that's so bad, so disappointing, that it has only been shown on television once. After this initial rating, it has never been aired again. And so the only way you can watch it is through bootleg YouTube uploads. And believe me, there's a reason why. George Lucas has gone so far out of his way to make sure we never see this, that we'll probably never see the original cut of it. Meaning we'll never see a perfect version of it. We will only see a TV version of it. So, of course, this episode is all about the Star Wars Holiday Special. Alright, well, until next time, this has been Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Surfing Through Cinema. Make sure to check us out on Facebook at Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry and on Instagram with Surfing Through Cinema. We also have a website, www.anchor.fm/Surfing Through Cinema, where you can learn more details on upcoming episodes and on past episodes.